Leonard Kessler had always prided himself on his meticulousness. As a 54-year-old forensic accountant, his life revolved around precision. He worked at a reputable firm, providing insights into complex financial fraud schemes. But when it came to his own life, he never thought he'd need to apply his skills to his personal world. That was until the day Rachel Palmer, his wife of 20 years, left him without a word. It started as an ordinary morning, except it wasn't. Leonard had just finished reviewing a set of financial statements, preparing for a busy week ahead. As he turned to the kitchen, the silence in the house seemed heavier than usual. His eyes caught the envelope on the counter, her handwriting. With quiet dread, he opened it. "I'm sorry, Leonard, but I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving you." The words hit him like a hammer. There was no explanation, no closure, just an abrupt end. His chest tightened as a wave of confusion and anger washed over him. Leonard had always been the reliable, steady partner. They had built a life together, comfortable, predictable, and secure. But Rachel's departure left a void. He knew something wasn't right. It was too clean, too sudden. His mind began to race. Leonard had seen enough financial deception to recognize a pattern when it arose. But how did it all fall apart so quickly? Was she involved in something, or someone else? As the days passed, Leonard tried to regain his footing. The house felt emptier, quieter, but something gnawed at him. There were holes in the story Rachel had left behind. She had taken her things, yes. But more troubling were the changes in their bank accounts, significant withdrawals, the kind that weren't easily overlooked by someone like him. The first thread was pulled. Leonard knew there was more beneath the surface. Leonard sat at his desk, scrolling through months of financial records on his computer. His trained eye quickly picked up the discrepancies, small at first, then larger as he dug deeper. His wife had been draining their joint accounts. It wasn't just a few $1,000s for everyday expenses. No, Rachel had been siphoning off far more, tens of thousands of dollars. The transactions were methodical, each withdrawal increasing in size, each made at odd times. The unsettling thought crept into his mind. This wasn't just a simple case of overspending or poor judgment. Something much darker was happening. Rachel had always been a good spender. She kept the household budget tight, ensuring that bills were paid on time and the mortgage was always handled. Leonard had trusted her to manage the finances in his absence, believing she could handle it. But now he was seeing the proof of her deception. More troubling than the stolen money, however, was the pattern. Leonard knew what he had to do. He began to trace her steps, searching for any sign of where the money was going. The deeper he went, the more he uncovered: extravagant shopping sprees, lavish dinners, each transaction pointing to a man he didn't recognize. Trey Harmon. Who was this Trey? And why did his name keep appearing in Rachel's financial trail? Leonard's heart sank when he finally pieced it all together. Trey Harmon wasn't just anyone. He was a fitness influencer, a man who had built a following by posting videos of his workouts and promoting expensive supplements. Rachel had not just been spending their money. She had been funneling it to him. The realization hit Leonard with the force of a freight train. Rachel wasn't just gone. She had betrayed him in the most intimate, personal way possible. This wasn't just a financial scam. It was an emotional one, too. Trey wasn't some passing fling. Leonard could tell by the size of the payments and the personal messages that had been exchanged. Rachel had been investing in this relationship for months. His emotions swirled: hurt, betrayal, anger, and something darker. He had always been a man of logic, but this was personal. He wasn't just fighting for money. He was fighting for his dignity, for the life he thought he had built. His mind started working quickly, calculating his next move. Armed with the knowledge he had uncovered, Leonard decided it was time to confront Rachel. He found her at the apartment she had moved into. The confrontation was inevitable, but Leonard had planned it carefully. He wasn't going to let emotions take over. Not yet. As Rachel opened the door, she appeared surprised, but not ashamed. Leonard could tell something had shifted in her demeanor. The woman he had once known had changed. She looked more confident, almost empowered, as though she had been preparing for this moment. "I know what you've been doing, Rachel," Leonard said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. He could see her pause, but only for a moment. Her eyes flickered to the side, guilt, barely concealed, spilling through. "Leonard, I didn't mean for things to get this complicated," Rachel replied, but there was a coolness in her voice. That stung. Leonard didn't let it go. "I've seen the accounts, all of it, the money you've been funneling to Trey Harmon. Do you really think I wouldn't notice?" Rachel shifted, a hint of unease creeping in. "It's not what you think." "Then, what is it, Rachel?" Leonard's voice cracked like thunder. "What is this? A new life with him, on our dime? You've betrayed me, financially and emotionally, and now you're going to try and lie your way out?" She remained silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter, but there was no remorse in it. "I didn't have a choice, Leonard. I was suffocating in our life. I needed to feel alive again." Leonard's anger flared, but underneath it, a realization began to form. This wasn't just betrayal. It was manipulation. Leonard knew Rachel's departure wasn't just about Trey. It wasn't even about the money, although that stung. No, what Rachel had done went deeper. She had been planning this escape for months, pulling strings and creating a version of reality that suited her. But Leonard wasn't just going to let it end here. He had always been methodical. He wasn't going to be the victim in this story. His years of working with financial fraud had given him the perfect skill set for what came next. Revenge, calculated and precise. Rachel thought she had won, but Leonard had a plan. And this time, he wasn't going to let emotions cloud his judgment. It was time to turn the tables. After the confrontation with Rachel, Leonard didn't feel the satisfaction of justice. Instead, a cold clarity began to settle in his mind. He had to play the long game. His emotions would no longer guide his actions. They had been the catalyst for his mistakes in the past. Now, it was time for precision. Leonard began to assemble his strategy, carefully calculating his next steps. He knew how to expose her, how to bring everything crashing down without ever lifting a finger. As a forensic accountant, Leonard understood how to manipulate the system, how to use evidence to his advantage. And now, he had everything he needed. The first piece of his plan was simple. He started gathering all the evidence. Rachel's financial misdeeds, the hidden transfers to Trey Harmon's accounts, her repeated withdrawals that seemed to coincide with her meetings with him. It was all there, perfectly laid out. Leonard kept everything locked away on a private server, just in case. Next, Leonard reached out to a former colleague, someone who still owed him a favor. This colleague worked for the bank where Rachel had been doing most of her transactions. Leonard needed to dig deeper, to find out where that money had been going beyond just Trey's accounts. It wasn't just a matter of getting the money back. No, this was about exposing Rachel for everything she had done, not just to him, but to the trust they had built over years. Days turned into weeks as Leonard methodically compiled evidence, setting his trap. It wasn't about revenge in the emotional sense. It was about leverage. He had learned long ago that power came from understanding every detail. He wasn't going to let her destroy everything they had worked for, and he wasn't going to let her get away with betraying him. Leonard had an idea, one that would make Rachel's actions public. He knew that Trey Harmon was a man who loved attention, who thrived on the spotlight. He was going to take that away from him and make him part of the story Rachel had been so careful to conceal. The waiting game had begun. The day Leonard finally received the last piece of his plan, he couldn't help but feel a sense of grim satisfaction. His colleague had come through and the evidence was undeniable. The money Rachel had been siphoning wasn't just going to Trey Harmon, it was going into offshore accounts, hidden investments, and luxury purchases. Rachel's betrayal ran far deeper than he had imagined. It was as if she had been living a double life, one with him and another with Trey. Leonard had been blind to it all, trusting her, believing in their marriage, when in reality, she had been plotting her escape from the very beginning. But the true prize lay in the final detail. An email exchange between Rachel and an offshore banker, discussing a large transfer of funds to an anonymous account. It was a damning piece of evidence that could unravel everything. Leonard knew that Rachel's world would come crashing down if anyone found out. It was time for phase 2 of his plan. Leonard contacted a financial journalist he knew, someone who had covered high-profile fraud cases in the past. He carefully set up a meeting explaining the situation without revealing too much. The journalist was skeptical at first, but Leonard knew how to present the facts in a way that would get attention. The offshore accounts, the stolen money, and the involvement of a social media influencer, it was a story that would sell itself. With the pieces in place, Leonard sat back and watched the storm begin to form. He wasn't doing this for revenge. He was doing it for justice, for his dignity, and for the world to know the truth. The story broke a week later. Leonard watched as the articles hit the front pages of major news outlets. The headline screamed in bold letters, "Social media influencer caught in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme." It didn't take long before Trey Harmon's face was plastered all over the news. Rachel's name was mentioned too, but it was clear that Trey had become the focal point. Rachel's life, her carefully constructed world, was unraveling faster than she could react. Her social media accounts were flooded with angry messages, and the calls from the press came incessantly. She had gone from a woman with everything to someone who couldn't hide fast enough. Leonard had been strategic. He hadn't named her outright in the initial report. The journalist had framed it in a way that allowed Rachel to remain a shadow in the background. But it was only a matter of time before the truth came out. As he watched the fallout from a distance, Leonard couldn't help but feel a bittersweet satisfaction. This wasn't about watching Rachel suffer. It was about restoring balance, reclaiming what he had lost. And yet, a part of him felt an unexpected ache in his chest. Was this the price of justice? Rachel finally reached out to Leonard, her voice shaky, almost pleading. "I never wanted any of this, Leonard. You have to understand. It just got out of hand." Leonard listened, but he wasn't swayed by her words. He had heard them all before. She had always been able to twist the truth to suit her needs, but this time it wasn't going to work. "I gave you everything, Rachel, and this is how you repay me?" Leonard's voice was cold, detached. The anger had long since faded, replaced by something darker. Acceptance. "This isn't about us anymore. It's about you. And everything you've done. You're going to have to face the consequences." Rachel didn't speak for a long moment. When she did, there was a hint of desperation. "Please, Leonard, don't make this worse. I'm trying to fix it." But Leonard had heard enough. "There's no fixing this. There's only the truth, and you're going to have to live with it." Months passed after the scandal broke. Leonard had won, but it wasn't the victory he had expected. Rachel's life had crumbled, her reputation shattered. Trey Harmon was forced into hiding, and the media circus that followed had turned their lives upside down. But Leonard had found peace. He had reclaimed control of his life, his finances, and his dignity. There was a quiet strength in knowing that he had done what was necessary, not just for revenge, but for justice. As for Rachel, she disappeared from the public eye, her name no longer synonymous with wealth or luxury. Leonard knew that in the end, he had exposed the truth, and that was all he could ever ask for. But as he sat in the silence of his office, one thought lingered in his mind. Justice had been served. But at what cost?